Are we live?
Good evening, everybody.
That's the problem.
Oh,
Are we live?
I don't hear an Amanda.
Are we live?
Let's see, is that my fault? That is my fault. Look at that. There we go. I hear
We are
Amanda.
live. We're live.
Yeah.
We're not live.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to an LP Alliance Solidarity stream. We are LP Alliance, an intercaucus coalition, rebuilding the Libertarian Party and revolutionizing the liberty movement. My name is Amanda Griffiths. I'm joined by Kyle Davis, and less laryngitis every day. I think we are now decidedly in the sexy voice season of the laryngitis. I think if my laryngitis had waited for 1 week, everyone, I could have been able to be in North Carolina and speak at Freedom Fire Fest. And instead, I was not able to. Kyle picked the topic for this evening because Kyle enjoys death, everyone. Kyle likes talking about death. And so Kyle wanted to do a stream on the death penalty, especially, however, relating to the recent case. This is in Texas. What? You cannot leave.
I left.
Relating to the recent case in Texas, I believe this is regarding Robert Roberson,
Yes.
who is facing execution on October 16th for what he was accused of the 2002 murder of his 2-year-old daughter as a result of shaken baby syndrome, which has since been debunked. And Kyle has been following this rather closely, and so he has put together a few thoughts on the relationship between this case and overall state encroachment and libertarians' role therein.
Indeed. So, for the entire history of the Libertarian Party, we've spoken out against the death penalty. And the reason is obvious, right? It's from libertarian thought. It's you cannot trust the government to decide who lives and dies. This has always been the case. It doesn't matter for what reason. Are there heinous acts that is easy to argue, or are easy to argue that should be life-ending for the person who's committed them? Sure. There's certainly an argument you can make. Do you trust the same people that fuck your taxes up every year to make that? No. And we're seeing it more and more often. Since 1973, 200 Americans have been exonerated after being convicted and sentenced to death. 200. So, at this point, you're talking about 4 per year. Once a quarter, there is someone who's been told by the government that they are to die, who's gone through the appeals processes and everything else, and then new evidence shows that they were innocent. We can't trust the government for that. We've never been able to trust the government for that. It's some of the same foundational arguments you'll hear from us in regards to ICE and everything else. When you are trusting the government to not kill you, you are saying that they have the ability, they have the right to decide if you should live or die. Joseph Miller's exactly right. 1 is all it should take to never have the death penalty again. They can never be wrong on it. And the fact that there have been 250 years shows that they're wrong a lot. So Robert Roberson, in particular, has been in prison for 23 years and was sentenced to death, and new appeals have been rejected. New evidence has come out to show that he's probably innocent, and they won't give him another hearing. The original lead investigator of his case has come out and said that he doesn't believe that he's guilty from the evidence. Prosecutor doesn't care. Governor Abbott doesn't care. Last year, at the 11th hour, he was set to die on my birthday in the middle of October. And they gave him a 1-year stay of execution. They haven't done anything with him since. They just gave him another year of prison. Shaken baby syndrome has always been controversial. It's this concept that basically, because babies are so fragile that if you shake a baby hard enough, you will basically concuss it enough that it will have brain death. Roberson's daughter had been very sick and had been in and out of the hospital. She had been to the hospital earlier the day she died. Roberson finds his daughter not breathing and attempts to get her to the hospital again, calls for help and everything else. And because there are bruises on this child who has been having seizures and everything else, they decide that it's shaken baby syndrome. Medical experts have come out and said that this is crap, that there's nothing here. And the government doesn't care because it's someone that they would look stupid to let off. They would rather look like a monster and have the people that believe in the death penalty continue to support them than to show someone that's become this high profile is a problem. This gets into, as well, a huge problem with the government deciding if you're psychologically well, which is another thing that libertarianism is pretty strict and strong about. The government gave him a test that is an absolute joke.
It's called the psychopath test, which
should tell you everything you need to know, basically.
Yeah, the psychopath test. This is a test that was designed. It was designed to determine people who had low levels of remorse, who might be violent, who had superficial charm. So these are all very subjective categories. And apparently, after the design of this test, it started cropping up all over in courts of law. Prosecutors would use people who scored high on these tests, juvenile offenders, if they happened to score high on these tests, according to a professional, would then be prosecuted as adults. You would have parole boards that were using high scores to keep people in prison. And many times you would have someone who scored high on the psychopathy test in a murder trial. Occasionally that would push the sentence from life in prison without parole to the death penalty. But even people who are behind the design of the psychopath test, which is itself stupid, argue that it should not be used ever to make a decision on whether someone should live or die. This is an incredibly subjective test. The diagnosis of psychopathy is an incredibly subjective thing. And essentially, in my view, boils down quite a bit to cultural norms and other people's perception. If you do not indicate remorse verbally, if you do not self-report certain ways of feeling remorse or feeling passion, then you get marked as psychopathic. It is entirely predicated on what is considered to be culturally normal and appropriate behavior for various other behaviors.
In Roberson's case, it's particularly egregious. Amanda's right. It's always wrong. But in this particular case, years later, Roberson's been diagnosed as autistic. So we recognize that in autism, emotions aren't always shown the same way as normal people. And so what did they use to decide he's a psychopath? They took, in the days after his daughter's death, when they've charged him with her murder, and they used his response to this death to say that he's a psychopath and had no remorse for his daughter's death.
which I don't think any of us all need to be reminded or need to be told that people have very different reactions to traumatic situations, right? Some people are overwhelmed. Some people just absolutely shut down. Some people freeze, don't know what to do. So taking someone's reaction following a traumatic event and using it to incriminate them is beyond disgusting.
One of the most common, so in case people aren't aware, one of the most common responses from male autistic people who are overwhelmed is to shut down and to not respond. They get into their own head. They won't show emotion. They won't be loud about things. They don't have the big emotional response you might expect them to. This man has been convicted of something that doesn't seem to even exist anymore, for killing his daughter, who there's a ton of evidence he was deeply in love with. And his, different way of processing and thought is being used to suggest that he is some kind of cold-blooded killer, which is something that isn't actually perfectly linked with psychopathy in the first place. You can't say that someone's a psychopath and thereby they're a cold-blooded killer. That's just not backed up by data. That's not backed up by science. That's not backed up by psychology. And they're using this to say that he must die.
I think what this does is we see throughout history, and we see now very often states and people in power will use mental health or mental illness as a way of getting rid of people. With the advent of contemporary psychology, this came up with asylums and sanatoriums. But very often you will have governments declaring certain groups of people undesirable. And yes, we are seeing this now with the trans community. Yeah. And we saw it before with the gay community, that there is some kind of deviation from what we consider to be the norm. And so there is a desire to affiliate it with terrible actions, criminal actions. I mean, every single time there's some kind of tragedy, there's some kind of murder, there's some kind of crime, and the perpetrator has any connection whatsoever to the trans community, that's thrown up. Is mental deviation, what is considered to be mental deviation, is almost always used as one of the first lines of persecution for anyone who wants to homogenize society. And we see that quite a lot. We see that universally in totalitarian ideologies and systems.
I have linked the Innocence Project's article on Robert Roberson into the chat. If you're on X, I will follow up after the show tonight and add it to the comments. Last year, despite all the evidence, despite multiple medical professionals coming out and saying not only was Roberson not at fault, but almost certainly the doctors of the time were, Greg Abbott wouldn't do anything. Former President Biden wouldn't do anything. Everyone refused to step in. 80 Texas legislators came together as a bipartisan coalition to say that this is nonsense and he must be given a stay of execution and this must be looked into. It forced, again at the 11th hour, as he was being taken to die, an additional year to be added. And in that year, they haven't done anything. They haven't looked back at it. They haven't given a new trial. And so this man is set to die despite doctors saying that the doctors screwed up. And why? How did the doctors screw up? Nikki, the daughter, had been sick. Nikki showed all the common signs of pneumonia, something that is very common in colicky newborns, especially ones who've been in and out of the hospital repeatedly for getting sick over and over. The medication they gave Nikki for her sickness, not recognizing pneumonia, has potentially deadly side effects when given to a baby with pneumonia.
My hair has potentially deadly side effects right now. Pardon me. Anyway.
We're watching a man who is going to be put to death in a little more than a week, who lost his daughter to medical illness, who was accused of murdering his daughter with no evidence based on bunk science, who has been in prison for 23 years. And despite his lawyers consistently fighting this, there being people coming out in droves about this man's innocence, about the fact that none of this makes sense from what they're going with. And the government won't even stop this execution and give this man another trial.
I think one thing we also need to think about are the very perverse incentives that riddle our criminal so-called justice system. But prosecutors are incentivized to do things like this. And
Especially
individuals,
in states like Texas.
People who are accused are incentivized to take plea bargains rather than have their day in court. There are a number of adverse incentives at every level here. And we've seen this multiple times, that there is a desire to put people away and appear tough for as long as possible and place all guilt onto a particular person and then shut them out, right? And I think Kyle is bringing up a good point, that when you have agents of the state who have erred in some way, then there's an immediate rush to absolve themselves of any responsibility. If anyone, in the hospital had anything to do with this girl continuing to be sick, that's not something you want on yourself. You push it off on a particular parent. I mean, we've had Spike Cohen on before. We've had Rebecca Massey on before. They talk repeatedly about how CPS does this quite a bit. Will find cases of children who have diseases that make them more prone to bruising, more prone to bleeding, and then try and place the blame on the parents, ignoring any actual diagnoses. And that seems to have been the case with Roberson in this case, when we later find out that he potentially has autism. And that's the reason for perhaps his abnormal response to tragedy, as though there's a normal response to tragedy. It's a situation of systems that try and isolate systemic problems and place it on the individual.
So in the US, as mentioned, more than 200 people have been exonerated. In that same time period, if you take this last year off, it's only 196. There have been 5 people in this last year alone who've been exonerated. 5 people that they got wrong and were 100% sure beyond all reasonable doubt were guilty. And it's something that goes to show the problem with the way we're doing prosecution as well. Prosecutors have every reason to go for the death penalty because of the claims, especially by people in federal government, that it's cheaper to put someone to death than it is to house them. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing someone who, there's hundreds of thousands of people have come together to sign petitions to say that this is wrong. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have come out to say this is wrong. And because people know that it would be bad for their political career or their career in general in the case of doctors, etc., they're going to put this man to death. I find that abhorrent.
So this is an interesting question, though, because libertarians are against the death penalty. They are against the state putting people to death because of, again, all the adverse incentives therein. there are obviously people in society who murder. There are obviously people in society who engage in horrific, vile acts. There have been arguments, of course, that it is cheaper to put someone to death than it is to house them in prison, than have them housed in prison and taxpayers' expense for the rest of their natural life. Now, interestingly, there's actually dispute as to whether that's true, given the fact that it does take a very long time to actually put someone to death in this country, and the technology involved in doing that. But it does bring up the question as to, so what does happen if you have someone who's done something horrific, who appears likely to do it again, or at least incapable of functioning in society? Do taxpayers just foot the bill for that?
The problem is, no matter how sure we are that someone's guilty, we keep finding out that we're wrong. We keep being 100% sure and 100% wrong. From my perspective, the only ways that you can justify the death penalty are if there is something like video, incontrovertible evidence that they did the thing, a confession, etc.
Well, I mean, confessions can be forced all the time, though.
Sure.
But so,
meant on top of it, even then, a person's ability to have worth to society, and I realize this, especially in the light of this last week where I'm being screamed at for being some Antifa leftist, is terrible timing on my part. But I don't believe that there are people who don't have value to society because of the things they've done. I believe wholly that things like the slave labor of prisoners is horrifically wrong. But I believe that you do give people the ability to work to atone for things. And I think that until our prison system recognizes that people want to atone for wrongs, we're going to continue seeing horrible things like this. And as long as we treat everyone who's ever been convicted as a permanent criminal, who's somehow scarred forever, marked, red-lettered as it were, we're going to continue to see things like this, where the government says, you have no worth as a human being because we've decided you're guilty of something.
You seem, though, to suggest that there is a potential situation in which the death penalty might be valid. You said if there's video evidence, incontrovertible video evidence of a crime being committed.
From my perspective, no. From my thoughts and beliefs and the understanding I've come to, from my knowledge of the situation, no. Despite all the horrible, heinous acts, I don't think that putting Saddam Hussein to death is the right thing. At the same time, he wasn't tried in the United States, and he was hung by his own people. Right? That's their country with their laws. I don't think that's right. Honestly, and this one's even more controversial, I think if we had caught Hitler, putting Hitler to death wouldn't necessarily be the right thing. And that one's very controversial for good reason. I think that the moment you have someone else pull that trigger, you have asked, and all of the people together have decided that someone's dying on our hand. I think that in and of itself is wrong. But that's my thought and opinion on it. My parents completely disagree with me. My parents are of the mind that, for instance, if you're a rapist, and especially if you've attacked a child, that you should be put to death.
So you said the second someone pulls a trigger, we've made the decision that someone's dying on our hand. Can we pick that apart? So what is our hand?
When you inject someone because we as a society have said that the death penalty is right, we have killed that person. We as people have decided that the only way to deal with this person, for whatever reason, is to kill them. And so we have decided that it's okay for us to kill them because something is so severe and so horrible and so evil that it's worth staining all of our souls for it. I don't think that's true. I think that as soon as something is neutralized, it's a different story. Phil points out that hanging tyrants is very much an acceptable behavior and prefers they go to jail and worked. Don't get me wrong. I fully understand why the guillotines came out. I understand the gallows. Amanda and I have talked about before and about the killing of the Russian czars and their families.
We do not have to rehash that conversation in public.
Yeah, it's like, but it's a valid point. Like, if you want a regime change and you know that a thing is going to be different, there's an absolutely reasonable thing to suggest that you have to kill somebody. I don't think it's ever right. And I don't think it's ever something that should be written into law and performed by a stable government.
That was what the other thing that I was going to say is, so you have, in times of political unrest, there's a question of legitimacy, right? When you have a state, you have the permanent aggressor, you have the always already aggressor whose legitimacy is declared an absolute according to law, deciding who gets to live and die. And that is a type of power that cannot be contested through legitimate mechanisms. That authority cannot be contested. The decision can't. The authority cannot. And so when you have societal unrest, that authority is in question. You have an extraordinary situation. When you have the state that is already seated, already vested with that authority, there needs to be a clear line as the sorts of decisions that can and cannot be made. Giving absolute power over someone's life and death is too extreme a privilege for an established government.
Yes.
Because there is no appeal in the end as to whether that power should exist. So it should not be granted.
Exactly right. Are there monsters out there that are terrifying and the world would be better without? Yeah. If you go look up Timothy McVeigh, he's a horrible, horrifying person. If you go look up Charles Manson, he's a horrible, horrifying person. If you assume that Lizzie Borden is guilty, which there's good evidence for and against, she's a horrible, terrifying person. There's a question on whether we need those people for the rest of us to understand how evil it really looks, but that's a deeper philosophical question that I'm making here. Point that I'm making here. The government cannot be trusted to decide who lives and dies. The government cannot be trusted to decide much of anything about your property in life. Which, libertarians and anarchists and everyone else in the liberty movement is kind of already aware of, right? Like this is commonly talked about by us.
And once again, this has to do with the fact that as a state, the authority cannot be contested. The particular decision can be, right? But the authority to make that decision cannot by legitimate channels. And so this is why revolutions happen. It's an illegitimate channel for contesting legitimacy. Any contest of legitimacy is ipso facto illegitimate if you're questioning the authority that someone has to do something. So because the state has been vested and has vested itself often enough with a particular authority, then that is absolute and cannot be taken from the state except by illegitimate means, which is why the authorities that we give to the state need to be minimal to none.
Yeah.
And need to always have opportunity to be revoked. And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough as libertarians and as people. If we're going to have a state, we should have more stable protections that allow us to take certain abilities away from the state. The state
Yes.
has all the power to take abilities away from us as people. The people need that same power to take abilities from the state, to take authority from the state.
That's something that you know that argument is literally the one that I've been making in these last couple of weeks that have suddenly made people decide that I'm an Antifa terrorist and everything else. The United States Constitution should not be hailed as some divinity from above, right? It is not God. It is a document by people who are flawed, and that document is not perfect either. However, the founders did recognize the same thing that Amanda's talking about. And they gave us, specifically the anti-federalists, the people that libertarians are, gave us an enshrined right in the Bill of Rights to defend ourselves from the government. It's the Second Amendment. People don't want to talk about it because as soon as you start talking about the Second Amendment, you start talking about being able to defend yourself from the government, suddenly you're a terrorist, you're a revolutionary, you're someone who's tearing everything down for exactly the reasons Amanda's talking about. The thing that I pointed out, and I stand beside, and as we've talked about, I'm not LPA, so don't come for LPA on this. Come for me if you're mad about me.
Phil is LPA, and I say that just to make him angry.
Phil is God King Mongo.
Phil Ryan is. We all sacrifice offerings to him, or offer sacrifices as well to him every week at our weekly meeting. He demands pledges of fealty, but we do
sure
it
to have satyrs dance around
because Phil is in fact the God King of LPA.
So
if he doesn't like what Kyle's about to say, Kyle will be sent to the gulag. Just letting you know, because Phil likes the work camps. You saw him in the comments there.
I've been watching videos of the ICE protests. I've been watching as ICE has killed people. ICE has admittedly killed 17 people, and they have lost 1,200 people with no trace. So, I think that despite all of the problems I've had with Boogaloo Boys and a bunch of their movement and everything else there, I think that they have the right tactics on this. I think that every one of us should be out there protesting. We should be out there watching ICE, and when ICE does things that are out of hand, we stop them. And if ICE goes after people, we stop them. The Second Amendment is there so that we have the ability to police our government. Our government is using soldiers as military, which is horrifically illegal. They are stripping away human rights left and right, which is horrifically illegal. And at the point where the law doesn't follow the law and says that the law doesn't have to be followed so long as it's for their cause, there is no law. The government has effectively fallen. And we're watching them. We're watching them lie to everyone right now and say, the Republicans are, the Democrats have shut down the government. Has your life changed because the government shut down? What, your plane's late? Why? Again, the government. Because the FAA, because of the TSA. These are the same things over and over and over, where we are watching people whose lives are being destroyed by the government, and then the government's response is, if you say anything, we'll kill you.
I think we're using two different definitions of government, right? Because you're talking about the government falling, and in reality, by another definition, the government's stronger than ever, right? It's incredibly totalitarian. So we are talking about the legitimacy, the theoretical legitimacy of those who govern has fallen. The principle of government has fallen. Those who in fact govern have, by dint of destroying the principle of government, become more powerful. So we have on the one hand a government that is extraordinarily powerful. We have the government on the other hand. The fact of government has been destroyed by those who govern.
Yes. the Constitution is something that I respect as an incredible attempt at making a great government. The Constitution, at the end of the day, is only as strong as we choose to make it to be, and as strong as the government allows it to be. The Constitution is being walked all over. The Libertarian Party has been pro-free movement literally since the beginning. That's something that people are terrified of. This has to do with the death penalty because many of the people, even that are being deported to a death penalty. Even if we don't kill them, they're being sent home to places where they are going to die. Just a few weeks ago, we deported a Russian who was a defector under the Putin regime, who has spoken out against Putin and had become a political rival. So we handed him directly back to Putin. When he got off the plane, he went into the police's arms in Russia to go to what is no longer called a gulag. That's what we're doing. A refugee from a tyrannical government came here for a better life, had no negativities on his record of any kind, had been a hard worker here, and we sentenced him to death for it. That's what's happening. I'm being told that the way that I'm talking about this is like it's the Holocaust, and that it's not the Holocaust yet. Waiting until there are gas chambers is too fucking late. The moment there was a government in Germany saying that all Jews must die, that's when the people should have stood up and started screaming. We're there right now. 2 million people have been drug out of the country in the last 9 months. 2 million. We're watching Americans who have done nothing wrong other than being forced to watch their own daughter die be put to death. It's time that as Americans, as people, we stand the fuck up and make sure that those sons of bitches don't kill another fucking one of us. This is something that I'm very passionate about, if that wasn't clear. It's our moral imperative to fight for each other. It's and I realize that I'm bouncing across another topic, but it's an important.
I actually think that there's a through line here, and that this is totalitarianism, and I prefer to use the word totalitarianism as opposed to authoritarianism, simply because I think totalitarianism gets more at the point. And if anyone wants a more thorough exposition on that, read What is Authority by Arendt. I know Arendt isn't as cool anymore, but What is Authority is actually a very good exposition on like what the distinction between authority and authoritarianism, and why authoritarianism is kind of a perversion of the concept of authority. So I prefer to say totalitarianism. We're seeing the fruits of totalitarianism, and we're seeing the rot within there. Totalitarianism, I think, is a more apt descriptor here as well, because you're seeing at absolutely every level of society this notion of absolutism is pervasive. So it's a totalitarianism in terms of the way of thinking, the way of doing that is attempting to be enforced. And it's a totalitarianism in terms of the scale of the enforcement. It's both an ideological and a material totalitarianism. And so when I talk now about what's going on in this country, totalitarianism really is the better word for it. There are certain types of adherence to principle. There are certain types of, fealty to a cause that make the cause the authority. And you can say, well, that's authoritarian. When we're talking about what's going on here, it is absolutely totalitarianism, and it is bereft of any true cause apart from the absolute power of those who govern. So that's my pitch for now, as to calling it totalitarianism instead of authoritarianism. As libertarians, we are anti-totalitarian. People can choose the authority that governs their life. People can choose what they heed. People can choose what they're faithful to. And there is no ability for a state, there should be no ability for a state to reach past that and attempt to totalize those decisions.
Joseph Miller's correct. Trump is using the government agencies to attack speech he doesn't like. He's indicting his political enemies and sending troops into U.S. cities. And people are looking the other way. Don't get me wrong. This is not a call to go out there and if you see someone who's iced, shoot at them. This is a call to go out there and remind them that the people are the ones with the power. It's a lot harder to think that you're the one in control of a situation when the other guy is standing there with a rifle. It's a lot harder to think you're the one in control of a situation when there's 100 people standing there with rifles. At the moment, we don't have a way to stop the broken system from sending people away. And we don't have a way to peacefully stop things like Robert Roberson's pending execution.
We have a way to ask.
We have ways to ask.
We can always ask.
So, for ICE, get active, make calls, cause them problems. Civil disobedience is awesome. Report people in wrong places who don't exist. In Roberson's case, I linked it before, and I'm going to link it again right now. The reason I'm linking the Innocence Project, which I don't think has the best, most detailed story of Roberson, I think the Marshall Project does a better job, is because they tell you how to get involved, step by step. They give you Governor Abbott's number. They tell you how to get in touch with him. They have the talking points to mention. There's a petition out.
Why don't we go through those? Can we go through those?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and present them on screen. Let's see. So, we can call. Let's see if I make this back to us. Can we still see this? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, that's still very viewable. So, call Governor Abbott. Your voice can make a difference. Pick up the phone and urge Governor Abbott to grant Mr. Roberson a reprieve so courts can fully review the new evidence. Contact Abbott right now and urge him to stop Roberson's execution. That's the number that goes to the Innocence Project, which will connect you to his office. They have recommended talking points. His daughter died from prior medical conditions. He'd be the first person in the U.S. executed based on the discredited shaken baby syndrome hypothesis. Roberson was prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced to death using a now discredited version of the shaken baby syndrome hypothesis. The overwhelming medical and scientific evidence now shows that Nikki died of accidental and natural causes. Please don't allow Texas to make the irreversible mistake of executing an innocent person and the first person executed in history based on the discredited SBS hypothesis. Please grant him a reprieve. There's a petition here. It's, again, through the Innocence Project, and I will happily link that one too. And all these links, again, for those on X, sorry, Restream doesn't let me directly send messages to you guys. All of these will come afterward. I'll be blowing it up through my socials, and as long as everyone in LPA is cool with it, I'll be blowing it up through the LPA socials as well.
We'll have to ask Phil because he's the God King Mongol.
Right. So, Phil, as God King Mongol, can we do this? The other thing is that the Innocence Project has set up an actual social media kit here. You can use their socials to show what's going on and to push for a stay of execution here, for a reprieve. Here are other people they've been successful for in the past. We talk about activism all the time, and most of the things we talk about are like what I'm talking about with ICE, right? Where you've got to go somewhere, you've got to show up, you've got to do something.
This is the kindest, gentlest form of activism that we have ever advocated for. So throw us a bone here.
Yeah. Post on socials, sign the petition, call the office. There are absolutely ways that you can do this that you don't have to worry about getting shot at. For those of you who are more willing or more stupid to go get shot at, go out and follow ICE. Go out and point them out. Go out and do things. This activism is important. We have, there's 535 people in Congress, one president, and realistically 3 Supreme Court justices with any power at the moment. Those people are the whole government right now.
Well, there are the bureaucrats, and there are a lot of them. I mean, ICE
Sure.
is the government, because government has its administrators, right? There are deputies and there are agents. And
That's
as
true.
everyone has read my thesis on radical maximalism, so you remember the distinction between deputies of change versus agents of change. Deputies are bureaucrats appointed by the government. They are entities of societal and governmental reproduction, right? Oh, Kyle's face is big. Kyle is a deputy of change right there. Agents of change, those are the people. Those are the people who actually go out and make decisions themselves and by their own will act and move society and politics. The deputies follow orders. The agents do, and they choose their authority.
So there's a QR code for the people who are on mobile that don't want to go through the chat and don't want to go find it on X later. I can't make that a whole lot easier. This person matters. And unlike Ross Ulbricht, we don't have to sell a party to do it. We can build a party to do it. We can stand in solidarity together and fight for this person's life. We can sit here and fight for our neighbors and friends and family. This is one person in one state, but he's representative of something much larger. He's representative of a movement that has killed hundreds of people erroneously. It's representative of a movement that rewards totalitarian thinking. We can stop that, but only if we stand up and do something about it. So, it's a little hyperbolic and dark to think about it. But from where I'm sitting, if Roberson dies and we didn't make calls and we didn't do everything else, his blood's on our hands, just like everyone else that we're letting these things happen to. So solidarity streams are usually a little happier.
Kyle completely picked this topic. I was at the mercy of my laryngitis, and he needed to talk more anyway. And he was like, I want to talk about people dying. And I said, why, Kyle? And he said, because I like to. And then Phil, the God King Mongol, ordered it to happen.
It's true.
Yeah.
We'll be back to talking about positives real soon for solidarity. I promise.
Potential positives. And I mean, this is a potential positive too. I mean, can you imagine if there is actually a stay or a reversal as a result, in part, of the work that we do in solidarity with one another? Be huge. Be huge. Let's go for it. We have genuinely nothing to lose. There's a freaking QR code on the screen, guys. There's a QR code. Go ahead and scan it.
Yep. If you're one of the people who doesn't want to talk to folks, there are 2 ways to get active there where you don't have to talk to a damn soul. And if you're willing to call people and explain to them why they're going to murder someone and it's horrible, it's there too. Your voice doesn't have to be your vocal cords.
I would really like for it to be, though, Rad, at this point. I would really like my voice to be my vocal cords again. We're going to get there.
We have to fight for each other. This was a short one. We knew it was going to be. But there are some things I want to talk about as far as LP Alliance. You should join the Discord and get active. We talk about things like this all the time. We give you opportunities for activism all the time, both inside and outside of the party. And we're starting to see some major dividends get paid from it. We're going to have a stream soon where we're going to talk about how donations are being spent and how LPA is organizing outside of the LP, and some people we're working with outside of the LP. The now Libertarian International, the working name for the IALP.
That was great. And it's going to be even greater. So
it's been refounded. The U.S. is going to be the headquarters, with the idea that the Libertarian Party in the United States is going to be the party by which all others are going to be measured.
It is the beacon, it is the yardstick. And we're very excited for that. And we're very honored to have been a part of that.
And I know some of you are about this at the moment. You're very freaked out at the idea that the U.S. Libertarian Party is going to be the one leading the others.
That's why we're here. And I don't mean Kyle and me. I mean, that is why we together are here, to make the party an engine worthy of driving social change.
There's a reason that we consistently talk about LP Alliance being bigger than the Discord, being bigger than the membership, being bigger than the donations or anything else. If you're working to make the party great, if you're working to make the country great, if you're working to advance the liberty movement,
you're an ally.
You're an ally. You don't have to agree with me and Amanda for that. You don't have to.
You have to agree with me. You do have to agree with Phil, though.
You do have to agree with Phil because he's the God King.
God King Mom.
That's how it works. Yeah. But this is important. This is a small thing for relatively, right? It's one man's life. But it's indicative of what we can do when we care to work together in solidarity. It's indicative of the kinds of things we can do as we grow and get stronger, and people learn how to make their voice heard.
I think, too, something to keep in mind, and this is maybe one of the most, metaphysical, wacky things you'll hear me say. One person's life is worth infinite lives. And the reason for that is, the It's a Wonderful Life phenomenon, right? The fact that one person exists or does not exist is the question of infinite worlds, right? Every single individual who lives has a near infinite capacity for creation, for interaction, for affecting others' lives. So one life really is worth infinite lives. If you save a life, it's worth saving infinite lives. If you destroy a life, you've destroyed infinite lives. And so this is something that we can all work for.
We've been ordered partially by the God King Mongol that we have to plug LP merch and things better. And so we're going to. I realize that after this particular conversation, you're probably not like, man, do I want some LPA merch right now.
Throw up the sandwich shirt. Throw up the sandwich shirt.
Well, no, we're going into fall and winter.
Okay.
And you know what fall and winter time is?
Sandwich shirts.
Hoodie weather time.
I think I actually had a hoodie shipped to me today. I should warn it.
Get your LPA hoodie. Let people know.
Comes in all these different colors. You don't have to have purple. Kyle likes them purple. Kyle is colorblind, so Kyle likes, stupid colors.
Purple's awesome.
Apologies to anyone who's a fan of the color purple. It's just simply Kyle likes it, so I assume it's terrible.
Man is right, though. We do have the "Don't tread on me" shirt. "Don't bread on me" shirt. Sorry. I think it's hilarious. As always, we've got the "Death the Kingmaker" shirt. We've got dad hats. We've got "Death the Kingmaker" flags.
We have so much Death to Kingmaker merch, and we also have Anarchy in the USA merch, which I am so stoked for. Can you throw that up? Do you have a QR for that or no?
Yes, somewhere.
I'm so impressed because I get notified every time somebody orders merch, and I am always really excited when I see, because I don't get to see who it is, but I get to see what's been ordered. And those Death to Kingmakers flags, man, they're selling like hotcakes. I want to see a sea of those, the Grand Rapids Revolution.
Ugh.
I want to be cloaked in a Death to Kingmakers flag, like a Death to Kingmakers burrito on a hot summer day.
Okay, well, this is
That's right. That's right, QR code scanner. You get your Death to Kingmakers flag. It is the flag size. It's not like a dinky flag. It is the size of what is behind me, right?
It's flag size. Our flags are flag sized.
Please don't tell me.
But this is one we haven't shown off before, which is our "Live Free, Die Fresh" shirt, which I think is hilarious. The last thing that I really want to plug, because we're getting to put some effort really back into it. Not that there wasn't effort into it, but putting effort into actually advertising, is the Torch.
We've got so many great new authors. We had Tim Johnson write his first piece, and I'm in the process of editing his second. And that went up yesterday. Charlie Larkin has been a powerhouse just writing so many different things, and he has so many wonderful insights to share. And I'm in talks with several other people. And I'm gonna call out Jay Delott right now, because he has promised me an article and he's been working on it. And I know it's got great potential because we've been talking about it. So I am looking forward to putting that up as well. And we break news. We broke news last night, guys. We broke news about the fact that the Libertarian Party of Colorado has received a donation in excess of the legal limit from a Republican gubernatorial candidate. If you want to learn more about that, you check out the Torch. Pretty easy.
And so, yeah, everybody here is LP Alliance. We're just a couple of voices in the dark for you.
Right now, a very hoarse voice in the dark. And Kyle.
And, we're hoping that you'll help us make the torch burn brighter. And we're helping that you can be another torch being held up in the Alliance. Have a good one. We'll be back tomorrow for the business list.